Good morning, grade 11s. Nice to see you guys again. For those who is the first time joining us, I'm Mr. Farrell. You can call me Sir or Mr. Farrell. So today, we're chatting about business. So before we begin, I'd like to everyone know that I've muted everyone's mics and I have turned everyone's videos off. If there's any questions or any comments along the way, you can either raise your hand in the bottom left, or just drop a comment, or I'll mute your mic if you'd like. Okay, perfect. So before we begin, we're just going to chat about what we did last week. And then we'll get onto the big picture. So, as again, grade 11s, Mr. Farrell, and as we all know, this is term 3 of business studies. So, before we ended it last week, we chatted about the production function. So, we do know that that's one of the 8 business functions, and it's quite important, as we all know. So, let's just go quickly through this again. The production function means the functional relationship between the quantity of goods produced, and you said that's the output, and the factors of production, which is the input. So those things come together in this function. They get the quantity and the quality output, and they're also in charge of putting the inputs in order to produce something. Now we chatted about what falls underneath the production function. We chatted about how labor, your workforce, your land, which is mainly your assets, capital, got to have money to make money, and we chatted about our services. So these are your aftercare services. This could be your actual service as the product. It could be what you produce. And then we did chat about how there's 2 different production systems. One, you either have a flow process. So in that would be mass production. And for an example, you're talking about your goods that are everyday, like your sugar, traditional, made and always having to be in the shops all the time, mass production, or even assembly production where it's on a conveyor belt constantly going. So we know that's the flow process, constant smooth flow of produce going into the industry. And then we have the other production system, which is the intermittent production, which, you know, in the name, it stops and goes. It's not constant. It's not a flow. So that, you know, job production, you might need workers certain times. For instance, when you're farming, you only need a lot more workers when you're actually harvesting. And even batch production, they do things in batches until that finishes, and then they make another batch, like we discussed last week. So now, I've sent everyone a Kahoot link, so if everyone could just jump onto that, and we will continue with the lesson. This is just a quick recap, not for marks and anything like that, so no need to worry. Okay, is everyone getting ready? Fantastic. So the code is 971, yeah, and then 3747. Let's see who pops up. Yes, we have Dylan. Yes, we have Gabby. And we have Angela. Fantastic. Okay, guys, well, let's begin. So, like I said, it's just the recap of the production function. And yes, this is not for marks. So, question 1, an example of a flow process. There's only one correct answer there. Don't think about it too long. It's all good. We did do this last week. I know there was some confusion. Fantastic. Awesome. And yes, so one person got it right, 2 of you guys didn't, but we'll chat about that now. So an example of a flow process is the mass production, because you're always doing it. The batch production, it's wrong because it makes it in batches, so that makes it intermittent, as same as job production, like I was the example with the harvesting. Nice. Congratulations, Angela. Okay, true or false? Production function means the relationship between the quantity of goods purchased and the factors of production. So quite easy, true or false? Give it a think. Hey, that was a quick one. Fantastic, guys. Looks like we're doing well. Let's see. Ooh, and here comes Dylan through the ranks. Let's go to our last question. We can continue. Which option below is not part of the definition of the production function? So we got labor, capital, land, and workforce. So I'm asking which one is not part. Hey, but all over the board there. Well, let's see. Podium. Hey, congratulations. Hey, Gabby coming in second, very nice. And number one is, I'm sure we're not surprised, Dylan. Congratulations, guys. Well, yeah, let's just go back and let's introduce a new topic now that I'm sure you guys are all thoroughly recapped. So our new one is we've got a bit more detail of the production function. This is when you guys can talking about the production planning and production control. So we'll start production planning because it's a step process almost. You got to do your planning first before you can go into production control, and you'll find out why this is so important. There are some similarities throughout, but you'll see the differences. So production planning, so that deals with the basic concepts of what to produce, when to produce it, how much to produce, and literally just looks at your long-term view of how you're going to produce. But also, you got to be specific. This is about the planning, not the actual action of doing it. So we're planning the production. So the reason why this is so important is because you need the right quantity, the right quality, and that's not even of your last finished product. I'm talking about equipment, raw materials, and that includes human resources as well. You've got to make sure you have enough correct workers that know enough skills. So make sure your products are delivered on time, increases the output, try and make it as efficient as possible, because that's how money's made. And it just decreases the costs and ensure that inputs are available when they're needed and not a backlog. That's where efficiency and logistics comes into it. So in the production planning, there's 4 processes that you go through. The planning process, routing process, scheduling process, and the loading process. So as you can see, we chatted about the batch production and job production, all that. So now this is just going to be on planning. As you see, any one you do, any flow process you pick has to go through the production planning. So for an example, we're going to use Coca-Cola just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So planning, so yeah, of the first one. So production planning is the planning of production and the manufacturing for products to go into the industry. So it talks about the resource allocation, the types of activities, production capacity, how much can you make in order to serve your customers and your different customers. Remember, Coca-Cola is an international brand worldwide. It sends Coca-Cola all over the world. So they have to make sure that they plan specifically that each country gets the specific amount and correct amount at the correct quality of Coca-Cola. And this is all done through planning. You can't have any action without you've planned yet. So then with planning, I can either get your traditional or your agile planning. So Coca-Cola would follow a traditional plan because it's the same process, it's the same product, and they make it the same way. And this is great, and it increases efficiency because people know what they're doing. An agile plan, those are plans that jump all over, up and down. So they're very versatile, and also they can adapt and to change very easily, which is quite nice for an agile planning. So for agile planning, you wouldn't really look at Coca-Cola, you would look at tech companies or fashion companies and stuff like that. Plans that can constantly change with the environment around it. And then now the second process of production planning is routing. So remember, you got to remember this is the plan. So routing manufacturing, also sometimes called production routings, is literally planning the route that each step that the product is going to go through. So from process step 1, from process all the way to step whatever until it's finished. So it's not actually doing it, but it's planning where it's going to go through. So now, for instance, this would be Coca-Cola. They want to make their thing as efficient as possible. So their routing planning or their production routing would be making sure that the syrup is made first before they make the can, making sure that they only spray paint the can at the end once it's closed, or spray painting the can at the beginning so that there's no toxins before the liquid's been poured in. So these are the types of things Coca-Cola is going to have to think about and route their plan to see which steps should go up after which. And like I said, this is all about efficiency. And then our third one is scheduling, which is also another word for planning. So scheduling is the process of arranging, controlling, and optimizing the work and workloads in the process of making the product. So it's used to allocate the plant materials, where to put your workers, how many raw materials you need, and scheduling them on time. So this is a little bit to do with logistics, which we'll get to in a bit in planning control. So basically, they need to make sure that the correct products are there on the correct time. But this isn't the action. This is just the planning of making sure that the tins for Coca-Cola are going to run out on the 3rd. So we need to make sure the tins are there in the manufacturing before the 2nd. So this is scheduling of the deliveries almost, but not just deliveries, it's scheduling of all the processes, including workloads. Loading. So loading is, as it says, loading involves assigning jobs to work centers and machines to various jobs. So for instance, Coca-Cola, the loading would be planning what workers are going to do and planning which machines are going to be doing which job. Does that make sense? So the schedule needs some way to assign jobs to the centers in such a way that the processing and their setups are minimized along, so that it becomes as efficient as possible. Everyone must know what they're doing at the correct time, at the correct moment. So like I said, guys, this is all the planning. You're planning of these guys being there at the correct time. So now before we continue, before we go into production control, are there any questions? You guys can just put one in the comments and all that. Yes, raise a hand, typing a comment. Yes, Gabby. That's a great question. So Gabby's question, for folks who can't see, is why is the production planning so important? Why can't you just go into the control? So the planning is so important because if you go into planning control, you have nothing to control because you haven't planned anything effectively. So you'd actually find out that if you took away production planning, production control would just be a lot larger segment where you'd have to plan before you actually start doing the planning and control that we're about to go into. But that's a great question, Gabby. But yeah, planning is always important. It's like make it more relatable, planning about your homework. Before you actually write an essay or anything like that, you plan before then. If you just go into writing your essay straight away, you'll find you write 2 sentences and then you end up having to go back and plan. Okay, any other questions? Okay, awesome. Looks like we're all on the same page, guys. So now we're going to go into production control. And the definition is it ensures production happens according to the production plan, like we said. But now we're going to more of the actions. So then we go on the left there with production planning, what we've gone through. The planning, the routing, the steps, the scheduling, the planning of logistics, and the loading, the planning of what jobs. Now we're going to production control. We're going to dispatching, follow-up, which is also known as checking up, inspection, and correction, also known as corrective action. So dispatching, it literally means what it means. It's sending something towards a particular destination. So, but in this sense in business, it means that it's all the steps that are necessary to implement the program that was planned for. So I'm talking about your logistics here. So your scheduling plan for your dispatching. So where are you putting your workers? Where is your materials arriving? But we know this, we know what to do in this dispatching because we've planned it in scheduling and loading. So this basically means the main things of dispatching is the procurement of the tools, the machines, and the human resources at the correct time. It's also giving workers the necessary work orders and instructions and drawing, which was all about what we're loading in production planning. The next one, like I said, following up, also known as checking the progress. So it's a control aspect, a little bit about quality control, but more about following up if actions are being done and not looking at the actual product, if that makes sense. So it involves really checking whether the work is going according to the plan, but also hardly anything goes according to plan. There are always going to be deviations, there's going to be ups and downs. So it's mainly checking how far they have deviated from the standard or from the plan. We're following up and checking outcomes from. This even comes in if you make a reservation or an order or a cake order or something like that, or a flower purchase. You would make your order, and in a day or 2 days or on the day before it's supposed to happen, you would call just to follow up or check the progress. So it's just similar over here. And you can only, because we're following up and checking the progress, from here, we can take the necessary steps in order to implement corrective action. But we'll get there in a bit. So the next third one is inspection. So inspection is the quality control aspect. So he's inspecting the final product, but not just the final product, all the materials that goes into there. So we're looking at Coca-Cola. It's the final product. Does it taste correct? Does it look correct? But yeah, are the cans maintained correctly? Is the Coke correct? Is there enough oxygen in there? Is the fizz correct? So these all go through multiple different inspection departments. So you can either look at the workbench with the tins, laboratories to make sure that it chemically is Coca-Cola, or even taste testings in rooms. So this is pretty important for quality control, because once you build up, like we chatted in the other departments of the 8 business function, public relations, you need to have a great word of mouth and reputation, and you come through this by always having correct quality along the route. There's no point in having lots of quantity but bad quality. And our last one in the control is corrective action. So this is all about, like it says in the name, is where have we gone wrong after we've done this finishing product, but not even gone wrong. What have we done, and where can we improve on this? Where can we try to save money? How can we make it more efficient? Should we put 2 people there? Should it be replaced by robots? That's the big question. So corrective action is taken so that you can achieve the target set by the plan. But also corrective action is also known as a control technique, which we'll get to in the later lesson. Now, before we continue, guys, I'd just like everyone, we've been sitting here for a while, just like everyone to stand up, get up from your seats if you can, do a little twist, stretch your spine, stretch your head up, close your mouth. Your body will love you for this. We've all been working very hard. Fantastic. Now that everyone's ready to go. Now, are there any questions in the control of production? Any questions? Okay. Well, it sounds like everyone seems to know what's going on. Fantastic. So now we're just going to do a quick activity. So it's on an essay. It's 3 paragraphs long. It's about 120 words. So the essay needs to discuss the different types of steps of the production planning and the production control. But I would also like examples to be included. But I'd like to be a bit more relevant. You know, it could be planning to do your homework, or planning to go on a holiday. It could be planning on an actual business, your dad's company, or even the school that we're at right now. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to do that and think about it. Not too stressed about it. This one's not for marks, but we'll get to that later. So while you guys are chatting and thinking about examples, I'd just like to discuss about a little bit of extra credit we can be doing right now. So if anyone here is called the Big Mac Index. So the Big Mac Index is super interesting. It's actually going to help us with our next topic. It's all about how currencies are put as a standard because of McDonald's. So I would like Oaks to go do some research about the Big Mac Index, and the first 3 students, which are able to email me exactly their own definition, I will be Googling it, their own definition of the Big Mac Index, gets an extra 5%. Okay, I'll give you guys another minute to complete that up. But it seems like everyone's on the right track. And now I just want to discuss to you why it's so important. So we've discussed why, but now why are we touching on this planning and controlling? Because you know what, this is an aspect of everyone's daily lives. If you don't plan to do anything, it's very hard to execute an activity or action correctly. The better the planning, the better it ends up. Even my lesson, for example, I planned very hard and long so I could execute a lesson perfectly. So that's what, and then also production. If there is no production, there is no service, there is no product to be sold. That's where the highest revenue comes in most companies. Okay, I think everyone should be done. If you guys aren't done, it needs to be submitted by the end of the day. But yeah, it shouldn't take you too long. So I would have liked to have done this in class, but not everyone was able to join us today, hence why this lesson is being recorded. But those who are here, I've put you guys into groups. Even the ones who aren't here on the register, I've put them in groups as well. Maybe tell your friends that there's a little bit of homework. So I'd like you guys to either use Google Meets, or you could use Mindomo, either one, and just come together and collaborate and make a poster that, very simply what you've just written, that includes the production process and the production control. I would like it to be a bit of an infographic. I'd like some flow charts, maybe a little bit of as little writing as possible. I'd like pictures. That's an infographic. I don't want to read it. I want to look at it and understand what's going on. And I'd like at least 3 examples to explain. So since you guys have all put your examples, work in your groups, and all that, and it should be fantastic. And then this poster is due for our next lesson. We will be sharing the posters around and chatting about them, see where we can improve, and see if everyone 100% makes sure they know what's going on. And we're done. Congratulations, guys. Thank you so much for being part of my lesson. I hope you've all learned something. I will be on the call later. I will carry on for another 5 minutes, just for those guys who'd like to ask any questions or just unsure about the homework or anything like that. And as you guys see in the bottom right, all work needs to be submitted by the end of the day, and the poster needs to be submitted before the end of the next lesson. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a great one, and stay safe.